So the rand has strengthened in early trade ahead of the midterm budget speech. Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana expected to update economic forecasts and make emergency changes to spending. Godongwana will speak at around 2 o'clock this afternoon. We'll bring you that address live when it happens. Roy Mutooni is an analyst with ABSA Asset Management with us now to have a look at the latest market moves. Roy, good to see you. Rand firmer ahead of the local budget today. Are there specific reasons why we're seeing that?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tembekile. I think this is more a dollar thing. The dollar has weakened a little bit from its high levels that we saw early on in the week. And it just looks like risk on is, to a certain extent, is coming through. And that's probably what's making the rand a little bit stronger as it stands right now. And as you can see, even markets are relatively positive and it's quite broad-based. So, yeah, I think it's a little bit of risk on and weaker dollar that's driving that more than anything else.
So when the finance minister does speak at 2 o'clock, this is not the main budget, but what are you expecting to hear? What will you be looking to hear?
For me, there's basically 3 or 4 points that I need to hear and understand. The first thing is the extent of revenue overrun relative to what he had forecast in February, because that will tell us about the possibility of new taxes or the need for new taxes to fund expenditure over the next 2 to 3 over the next 3 years. That's the first one. The second one is how much money will go into SOEs, and in particular, what's going to happen with Eskom debt, because they've been saying they've found this formula of sorting out the debt problem at Eskom to a greater or less extent. That's going to be incredibly interesting because that reflects on what is available to invest in Eskom and power generation. And I think finally, the split between what happens on social spending, so the extension of the COVID grant and that sort of thing, whether there's a basic income grant, and most importantly, just how much money will be left over for infrastructure investment, because that determines just what level of economic growth we can expect over the next few years. I think those would be the key things for me.
Right, and just away from our budget issues, the British pound, I see, has hit a 5-week high. Is that directly linked to the arrival of a new Prime Minister and new cabinet?
No, absolutely. It just feels like the market has greater confidence in this new team. And I think more than that, because of the possibility of a general election in 2 years, it feels like the market now sees that these guys are not going to be political, but more economic. So managing yields downwards, they're not going to try any new revolutionary theories like the previous guy, and they're going to try and just keep the economy on track. So from that perspective, the market is more than happy to lend to the British government at lower interest rates than we saw prevailing in the last few weeks. And as a consequence, capital is coming back into the UK. And I think that's what's driving the stronger currency.
Lastly, the Competition Commission of India has fined Google $113 million for anti-competitive behavior. What exactly did Google do?
So this is interesting, and I think you're going to see more and more of these. So effectively what happened was an NGO in India was the whistleblower saying that Apple was forcing developers, first of all, to adopt a certain app for in-app purchases, and as a consequence of that, was also forcing them to pay, I think, 30% commission to Apple. This NGO is basically saying that reduces competition, increases barriers, and reduces innovation from app developers. And it seems like the Competition Commission has found this to be valid. And as you can well imagine, if this is true in India, it must be true in a whole raft of other places. So it will be interesting to see how this spreads across the world.
Roy Mutooni, thank you very much for speaking to us. Roy is an analyst with ABSA Asset Management.